Attention, please.
4, 3, 2, 1. We have ignition.
You already know who it is.
Leaving all the competition in the dust.
You're listening to 1330 WEBY, Freedom Friday with Carl Gallups, coming up next.
The following presentation is controversial and may be offensive to some audiences. Viewer discretion is advised.
Radio from the heart of America now.
And now, the Commander-in-Chief is back. Freedom Friday with Carl Gallups, the Oval Office of Gulf Coast Talk Radio.
All right, welcome back, Gulf Coast. Welcome back, America. And you are in the Oval Office of Gulf Coast Talk Radio. And, of course, we're broadcasting live from the Gulf Coast, broadcasting to portions of 4 states on the Gulf Coast by radio. And we stream live over the Internet. We stream live over your smartphone. We podcast. We're connected to the PNN News and Ministry Network. And we're all over the Internet. So we welcome our listeners from coast to coast, sea to shining sea, and around the world. We thank you for being in the Oval Office with us today. We've got a great show for you, a lot going on in the world, and we're going to try to squeeze in as much of it as possible and give you some news and commentary and opinions and ideas that might be a little different than what you hear elsewhere, and or we'll go a little deeper than what you're hearing elsewhere. And we will particularly cover things that the mainstream media won't. And we'll try to get as much truth out there to you, or at least what's being reported as truth. And if we discover later that it's wrong, of course, we'll make it right. That's the way we are. And by the way, many of you know, but we have new listeners every week. You can keep up with us live during the program. Just go to facebook.com, freedomfriday.carlgallups, freedomfriday.carlgallups at facebook.com. And there you'll see the live feed. You can listen to us live from there. You can download podcasts from there. And you can see the links to the stories and the people to whom we are talking with and the stories that we're talking about. So that way, while we're talking about things, or if I'm referring to something, generally, I'm 99% of what we're talking about, you can just go there and see it, and you can comment on it, and you can ask questions, and so that way you can kind of interact with the show. All right? Well, my first guest this afternoon is Jeff Roorda. He's a retired police officer and a 4-time Missouri State representative. Right now, he works as a business manager for the St. Louis Police Officers Association. And so in the wake of the shooting of Michael Brown, Roorda was the go-to police commentator for CNN's coverage of the Ferguson incident and the riots and the aftermath, and he has also appeared on ABC and as I said, CNN and Fox and many other networks. I think he's done well over 100 interviews on Fox and CNN alone, and that's Jeff Roorda. He's just written a brand new book that is not due to be released till November 10th, about a month from now, but it's I believe that Amazon's already shipping. In fact, I was going to the page. I went to the page just a little while ago. It says they are in stock, but requires a couple of days extra to process. So that's a good thing. And you can. The brand new book he's written is called "The War on Police: How the Ferguson Effect is Making America Unsafe." And of course, it's a cop's eye view of one of the most tumultuous and heartbreaking times in recent history for law enforcement. And so we're going to bring on the expert, Jeff Roorda. Thank you so much for being on Freedom Friday today. It's good to have you.
I appreciate you having me on, Carl.
Absolutely. Well, listen, I'm thrilled with the book. Can't wait to get my hands on it. I've already read the entire introduction to it and on the Look Inside feature and everything else that's affiliated with it. So I'm pumped about it and will be glad to receive my copy. So am I correct that it's not officially going to release till November, but you apparently Amazon is shipping now, huh?
Yeah, November 10th is the actual release date, but we're up on Amazon on pre-orders. They're shipping them out. The books are in the warehouse. You can also go to WND.com, my publisher, or thewaronpolice.com, my website.
Okay, good. WND Superstore is, and you can get them there right now, folks. WND Superstore or Amazon.com. Now, the November 10th is the actual pub date, and that's when it will be in bookstores across America, and will be the official release date. But anyway, listen, Jeff, tell us. First of all, your website. I think you just said it. TheWarOnPolice.com, correct?
Yes.
All right. The War on Police. Run all that together, folks. TheWarOnPolice.com. I'll post that on our Facebook page in just a moment so that you can get to it later if you're driving home right now listening to this. TheWarOnPolice.com. Well, Jeff, first of all, tell us, why you wrote the book, and then just dive right into it. I mean, what's the Ferguson effect? What's that all about, and why did you write the book? I know you've been all over media about Ferguson and everything that's happened since, so talk to us. What's on your heart about this?
Yeah, Carl, I'm here from St. Louis, represent police officers around the St. Louis region, and, was right here at Ground Zero when Ferguson broke loose. I've spent a lot of time defending Darren Wilson. I've spent a lot of time police shootings elsewhere for some of the networks you talked about, and I'm just kind of trying to get law enforcement's side out there, trying to set the record straight when it is so greatly skewed in some of these cases, and it really, the book has two parts. The first part is putting history back on its axis, and then the second part is more of a roadmap to where we go from here and how we have less of these deadly confrontations between cops and kids in the inner city that we're seeing on the news so much.
Right. Do this for us, Jeff. There has been so much that has happened concerning the war on police and Black Lives Matter and the Dallas massacre since Ferguson. So remind our listeners, give a quick synopsis of the Ferguson story, and of course, Officer Darren Wilson. And in your book, you have an exclusive interview with him, one of only 3 that he has ever done, and you've got one of them in your book. So remind people the details of Ferguson, kind of give a quick synopsis of how that unfolded, what the impact was, and talk to us a little bit about Darren Wilson, Officer Wilson.
Sure, and Darren's a great kid, and just amazes me every day that he's handled this thing so well with such grace. And here's a guy who went to work that day and is lucky to come home that night.
Yeah,
Michael
absolutely.
Brown was trying to kill Darren Wilson. I know that's harsh to say because the young man's dead, but it's it was really a be killed situation, and Darren was left with no other choice. And as you say, Darren and I have gotten to know each other very well. He was gracious enough to give me an interview, the first interview he did, by the way. He also did one with George Stephanopoulos on ABC, and did one with the New Yorker, which was a complete ambush hit piece, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
But, you'll really get an idea of who Darren is as a person from my interview, because that's really what I wanted to accomplish when I sat down and talked to him. I wanted to humanize him. I wanted people to see him as I see him. He's not a superhero. He didn't wear a cape to work. He's just a regular guy who got flung into an extraordinary circumstance and survived it.
Yeah. Give us a little insight into his mindset now. I mean, now that the dust has settled, well, the dust will never settle in his life, but you know what I mean. It's
right.
It's a little behind us, although the effect lingers, and after the break we're going to talk about that. And of course, since then, we've had a barrage of hate on police, shooting police, killing police, attacking police, slandering police. But how does Darren Wilson feel about this? I mean, what's his life like? What's he going to do with his life? What's he thinking about all of this?
Yeah, without going into a lot of detail about where he is or what he's doing,
of course.
He realized pretty quickly that he couldn't be a police officer again. All the media hype and all of the hate speech towards him and law enforcement just made it impossible for him to continue in a career that he really loved. Didn't want to do anything else with his life but serve the people of his community in a very unselfish way. And that's why it's so tragic that even Eric Holder, who wanted with every fiber of his being to find wrongdoing on the part of Darren, had to ultimately exonerate him and acknowledge that Darren did things right, did things by the book, and had no choice in the actions that he took.
Yeah.
But I mean, people ask me how Darren's doing, and this is a line from the book, and I use the same answer every time. His world got turned upside down, and he learned how to walk on the ceiling, and that's really the best way to describe the guy. He's got a lot of resilience, a lot of resolve, and I respect him tremendously.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, Jeff, I was thinking as you were speaking that what a heartbreak for him. Of course, it's heartbreak for everything. I mean, I don't worry about being too politically correct. Of course, for Michael Brown's family, et cetera. But now we're talking about Darren Wilson, and I was speaking with you off air, and I was in law enforcement,
right.
and I have been shot at. I've had to draw my weapon. I've had to fire my weapon. I've been involved in all of that, and been in some situations where I just about didn't come home that night. But at the same time, that was my career. I mean, my college education, my bachelor's degree was in criminology, criminal justice, Florida State University. I mean, everything in my career was headed that way. Of course, the Lord got a hold of me, and it took a different direction many years later. But the bottom line, I can't imagine being dedicated to that career, being involved, investing my life, and in my case, education and everything that way. And then because of an incident in which I was protecting my life, either kill or be killed, everything is just blown apart because of the lies and the scandal and the slanders, and a lot of it coming from the White House and from the Justice Department. I mean, there's got to be some justice somewhere in this, Jeff.
Well, there's not much justice over at the Justice Department these days.
Now.
And, it wasn't just Darren whose career came to an end. His wife was also a police officer at Ferguson, and she had to resign, too. She would have been she would have been killed if she'd have gone back to work and tried to handle the call. I mean, there's a bounty on both their heads.
Right. Let's do this, Jeff. Let's take a quick time out. When we come back, I want to talk to you about Barack Obama, Eric Holder, the current climate, how much they may or may not be responsible for it, at least your opinion. I've got my opinions on it, and I can't wait to get my hands on your book to see what you say there. But while we have you live, I'd like for you to talk about that. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
All right, good deal. Excuse me, folks, I got strangled. You are listening to Freedom Friday with Carl Gallups. I don't think that's ever happened before. What do you think, Mallory? My world-famous producer, I thought she'd grab the mic and talk for me. But anyway, folks, we'll be right back after this timeout. Don't go anywhere.
The commercials are done. You've waited long enough. Let's go.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention?
Radio from the heart of America now.
And now, the Commander-in-Chief is back. Freedom Friday with Carl Gallups, the Oval Office of Gulf Coast Talk Radio.
All right, folks, welcome back, Gulf Coast, and welcome back, America, and welcome back to Jeff Roorda. He is our guest this afternoon. And Jeff's a retired police officer and a 4-term Democrat, Missouri State Representative, and he currently works as the business manager for the St. Louis Police Officers Association. And he has been an expert commentator, expert pundit, all over the media, particularly in the days during and right after Ferguson. And he's been all over CNN and Fox and ABC 100 and something times on Fox and CNN alone. He's just written a brand new book. You can see it at thewaronpolice.com or the WND Superstore, the publisher's WND Books, out of Washington, D.C., and or at Amazon. It's shipping right now out of Amazon and out of WND Superstore, although the release date's not till November 10th. That's when it will be in bookstores everywhere. But Jeff Roorda is the author. And by the way, his last name is spelled, in case you want to look him up and look all that up, R-O-O-R-D-A. R-O-O-R-D-A, Roorda. So, Jeff, thank you so much for being on Freedom Friday. Listen, so you've written this book, The War on Police, How the Ferguson Effect is Making America Unsafe. I asked you when we came back if you would give us your ideas, your opinions, your research, whatever you've got in the book, or, however you feel about this. Barack Obama and Eric Holder, in my opinion, and you don't have to share this opinion, but they hold a lot of responsibility for this police-hating effect that's rippling or roaring across America. I mean, beginning before Ferguson, but I mean, Ferguson kind of was the exclamation point on the sentence for me as I watched it unfold. But now we've had the Dallas Massacre and Black Lives Matter movement. What do you say about all of that?
Yeah, I'm incredibly disappointed. I've been harshly critical of the Obama administration with regards to how they've talked about these police incidents, particularly with their rush to judgment. Now, they've tried to be more careful since then, but they really can't help themselves. But instantly assume that the police are wrong whenever there's a high-profile encounter. And we almost always find that the officer acted properly and that the aggressor was the person who ultimately ended up dead. And, you know, it's an injustice, not just to the police officer, but to the kid that made a dumb mistake on the other side and didn't comply, used deadly force against a police officer, that we keep sending this message that cops are wrong, cops are wrong, cops are wrong, and we focus all of the attention on these encounters on the police side of the encounter, when the way that you fix it is by focusing attention on the other side of the encounter, and why young black males are so hopeless and so desperate that they make these senseless decisions to use deadly force in what could have otherwise been a routine encounter with law enforcement.
Yeah. So where do we go from here, Jeff? I mean, what conclusions do you come to in your book? I mean, where do we go as a nation? I mean, this presidential election is huge, I think, because I believe that that the two candidates both have a completely different mindset and flavor about police and America. In fact, I've heard them both speak about it. But don't you think that we're kind of at a precipice here in our nation? Where do you see it going from here?
I never thought that I would see the day where law and order would be a wedge issue in a national political campaign. I thought, that used to be one of the few issues that politicians of every stripe could agree on, and now all of a sudden there is this neo movement that's so focused on criticizing law enforcement, so misguided. These are men and women who go to work every day in the worst neighborhoods in the inner city. Nobody else from government is in those neighborhoods. You don't see Barack Obama in those neighborhoods. You don't even see their local elected officials in these neighborhoods. Most of them lie about where they live and live somewhere else. We're the only guys that go in there. We are the original Black Lives Matter movement. We go into these killing fields and try to stem this tide of violence. And sometimes when we disrupt that violence and that crime, the people who are engaged in it turn their violence towards cops. And that's almost always what results in these blood in the streets incidents.
Yep, I've had it happen to me. I mean, as soon as you said that, a particular incident came to my mind, and this show's not about me telling my war stories, but I just was thinking. I waded into a government housing area to deal with black-on-black crime. And in the middle of making an arrest, which was obvious to all who the perpetrator was, I had several buildings, apartment complexes, empty out on me and started a riot. We had to call in all manner of police from all over the multi-county region to help quell the disturbance. It was, and that was over 30 years ago. So these things, they can happen and they can erupt quickly, and there can be some horrible outcomes from it.
Right, and the outcome of the Ferguson effect is that police officers are reluctant to do their job, and there's fewer of us because so many people are leaving the field, and criminals are emboldened to commit crime, and there's more of them because there's less enforcement. And who loses in that scenario? Disproportionately, blacks living in the inner city are the victim of these crimes, and when you create this environment for depolicing and the Ferguson effect to occur, it really hurts blacks, and that's why I take such umbrage with the Black Lives Matter movement and other people engaged in hate speech against police.
Yeah, well said, Jeff. You know, Jeff, because I've spent my law enforcement career in Florida, in 2 different sheriff's offices, but deeply connected to many other law enforcement agencies, including Florida Department of Law Enforcement, Florida Highway Patrol. I still have a lot of friends who are involved in that and or who are just now retiring, and many of them high-ranking officials now, all of these years later. And it's been amazing for me to watch, and I'm going to make this statement, then I'm going to ask you a question because it goes to your book and your study. I'm watching billboards and advertising on television go up everywhere. They're advertising for people to apply to the Florida Highway Patrol. And all of my career and all of these decades since my career, that's never been the case. If you wanted to work with the Florida Highway Patrol, you had to get on a waiting list. Now it's like they're begging for officers. Do you think that's a part of what is going on around our nation?
Yeah, definitely that's a symptom of the Ferguson effect. And because we're close to ground zero, I think it's worse here. Our police academy classes are typically 40 people. The one we graduated a couple weeks ago only had 17 people in it, and fewer African Americans by percentage than we had before Ferguson. We were really making some inroads towards more diversity in the police department now, because black police officers were treated so horribly in Ferguson and other places where they rioted. Nobody wants that job because you live with your feet in 2 different worlds. Yeah. And really, we all lose, because not only do the people who are the victims the most lose from this, but just all of us. I mean, what can you imagine our society, our culture, without police? No, of course not. And I read an article in Huffington Post or some other commie rag the other day that suggested that police ought to work like firefighters do and only show up when the bell rings. Yeah. Jeff, listen, I have to cut you off because we've got to go. Yeah, that's amazing. Jeff, I'm going to have you back on soon, but right now we got to get out of here. It's the bottom of a hard break. You've been listening to Jeff Roorda. Go to freedomfriday.com, Gallups on Facebook. You can get all the links there. We'll be back after